What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is a roaming prepper. Thank you for joining me once again for a Saturday Sitrep. I hope everyone's doing well, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you have any questions regarding what I say or the reviews. I'll try and give you all my reference points. This is a compilation of corporate, state, and media outlets. And everything, to my knowledge, is public notice, is public available. Or public availability, sorry, so you can go out and you can do your own research. I'll be right back, and we're going to go through the continents and the regions around the world, and we're going to talk about what's going on today. So hang on just a second. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining me once again on a Saturday Sitrep. This is the Roaming Prepper, and I am your host, Pete. Now, before we go any further, I would like to report that Bentley and Peppermint are not stoned. They're actually tired because they got to go downtown today, and Bentley in particular had a blast. Although the Chihuahua was not very fond of my big-headed friend over here, but I digress. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go around the continents. And again, I'm going to keep this one straightforward the way I have been doing. This was my classic Saturday Sitrep, and I'd like to go back to that tradition because we can go off on rabbit trails with some of this stuff. So I'm going to try and keep it between the buoys today, so bear with me. So, Africa. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is reporting that 4 were dead in militia attack near Virguna Park. 3 rangers and a technician were killed in the attack by their convoy by gunmen in the national park, which probably means those rangers and police got into it with poachers. This is an ongoing issue in Africa. They're shooting, and this is not legitimate licensed fee-paying hunting. And I'm not a big fan of shooting exotic animals myself. There's so many other things we can shoot and eat. But that being said, some people do that, but this is not it. This is not legitimate. They probably got into it with some folks. This is from Africa News. Another one from Africa News. Thousands displaced as death toll climbs in central Nigeria clashes. This is in Nigeria. Now, a lot of Africa is having a lot of instability, and this is doing is you have a large populace because you have fightings between the governments and the jihadis, and there's other ethnic and religious and tribal groups all fighting with each other. The people are fleeing, and they're going to Europe, or they're coming to the western part of the world, the U.S. and whatnot. So again, a problem. And speaking of instability, that's also from Africa News. The newspaper called the East African, Somalia seizes military shipment bound for Al-Shabaab, which is a spin-off of the old Al-Qaeda. Somalia's National Intelligence Agency, called NISA, on Thursday said it seized 2 illicit shipments of military hardware bound for the Shabaab military group. Again, you can ban the damn guns, but it's just going to create a black market, and basically the bad guys get the guns. So good job for these folks. Another one from the East African, rainy season spells another round of doom for South Sudan. So as you know, Sudan right now is having basically a civil war, and now the rainy season is promising a new round of displacement and now sickness as hundreds of those fleeing the conflict cross the border to settle in the northern region. Now let's think about this for a second. You have a conflict going on, water's been destroyed, sanitation's destroyed, sewage is destroyed or damaged, power lines are down, there's no infrastructure to speak of. Now you have monsoon rains, mosquitoes, people don't have a toilet to use, so they go in wherever they have to go. You now have a perfect soup, and I use that word very loosely, for cholera, dysentery, malaria, dengue fever, whatever diseases are in that part of the world. This is just going to be a mess. And again, these kind of illnesses, then these immigrants are trying to flee this horrendous shit, and they can very easily wind up bringing diseases to another part of the world. So again, Africa is where I'm watching right now. Everyone's very focused on China. I think China embarrassed the shit out of themselves with the Rona. Africa is an absolute disaster. We've got the US in there, the Brits, the Germans, the French, the Russians, the Chinese. Everybody's got their hands in there. These poor people are suffering left and right. But I wouldn't be surprised if the next ugly disease comes out from that part of the world. Just the combination of factors. Anyway, moving on, East Asia and Pacific. So India's Prime Minister says peace on border essential for normal ties with China. Peace and tranquility on the border with China is essential for normal ties to resume with the countries. He's basically saying, you guys want to trade with us, you got to freaking play nice. As you remember a few years ago, there's a demilitarized zone, or a no weapon zone, so nobody can carry guns in this one area that both sides patrol. And the Indians and Chinese got into a fight that basically became, what's the word I'm looking for, medieval. They literally killed each other, fought each other with fists and elbows and rocks and sticks and whatever the hell they had on their person that was not a gun or a knife. And apparently, you know, like an Indian guy got bashed to death with a rock, and one of the Indian guys threw a Chinese guy off a damn cliff. Like, it was that bad. One of these just brutal hand-to-hand combat. So, and there've also been skirmishes, like firefights over that border. So that's a sketchy area we don't hear enough about, because India doesn't have that news, and I don't see the news from India as much. China hides their news completely. India's exposure here in the US is not as much as it should be. So I suspect that's going to be a sketchy place. And both of those countries are nuclear powers, and both have substantially large armies and large populations, and they share a border. So that's going to be interesting. Taiwan, US-Taiwan reached deal on part of the 21st Century Trade Pact. The trade initiative covering customs and border procedures, regulatory practices, and small businesses. So the U.S. is doubling down on business with Taiwan, and most of what the West is going to follow. Thailand's move forward says coalition partners need not support amending royal insult law. Now, that's an old law. That's kind of really not a proper thing. This is from Reuters on MSN News. Essentially, Thailand's more progressive, or modern wing, if you will. They're really not progressive, but they're saying that right now, if you insult the king or the royal family in Thailand, you can go to jail for 6 months for an insult. And they're like, that's stupid, unless you're making threats, in which case, yes, that's not cool, you go to jail. Just because somebody says the king is a dumbass doesn't mean you should throw him in jail. So we'll see how that goes. Now, Europe. Europe's very interesting, and I'm not just talking about Ukraine. Weather emergencies declared across Europe as deadly torrential rain strikes. This is Euronews. So several weather-related emergencies have been declared throughout Europe, including Italy, where fatal flooding has followed severe drought in some regions. And this is problematic because the drought kills the plants, so you don't have the root system to absorb the water. Plus the rock, especially in northern Italy, is very hard, is very low permeability and poor porosity, which are different things, by the way. They're not the same. So these weather emergencies, these flooding, it's going to damage the crops. So yeah, Italy seems like they have their hands full. Plus their more right-wing or nationalistic government is clamping down on any more immigration because they're just got too much to struggle with on their own. Georgia and Russia. So Moscow's decision to resume flights to Georgia sparks backlash. Georgian Dream encouraged Georgians to consider the Kremlin's decision through a supposed humanitarian prison, easing travel for Georgians currently living in Russia and giving them the chance to communicate and travel freely. So apparently when Russia got into the war, they closed their borders, and a lot of people couldn't get out. Even if you weren't a Russian citizen, they're like, well, now you're just stuck here. It's good to hear that at least they were trying to do something right by these folks. That's on the Financial Times. Now, Russia-Ukraine, and this is on Reuters. Explosions but no reported casualties after air raid alerts throughout Ukraine. Air raid alerts sounded throughout the entire nation of Ukraine on Friday, with some areas later reporting explosions, and officials saying anti-aircraft units, which were in action in several regions. There was a report from another agency, which I can't remember the name now, that several Russian jets were shot down because the Ukrainians are starting to get really good with their anti-aircraft skills. So we have not seen the Russians do what I expected them to do and basically fly Tu-52 Bears at 30, 40,000 feet and just bomb the shit out of part of Ukraine. This seems to be a very targeted, limited war, so I'm not sure what's going on here. This is strange, but that's just me. Another report from Associated Press, Saudi Arabia and Ukraine. Ukrainian president attends an Arab summit in Saudi Arabia where many leaders are close to Moscow. President Zelensky arrived in Saudi Arabia ahead of an Arab summit on Friday, where he was set to address the leaders who have remained largely neutral. I don't think he's going to be able to break up OPEC or OPEC Plus, but he may be able to kind of pressure him to not be helpful, or certainly not to take sides. I find the irony in this is that we here in the US, instead of drilling our own fuel and saying to all these countries that don't like us, we're cutting back our own hydrocarbon production. We're getting it from Saudi and Venezuela, of all places, and feeding money to the Middle East. But then at the same time, we're buying solar panels from China, who's using Russian oil to build the solar panels. So we're giving money to Russia through China on one side, and then we're giving weapons to Ukraine on the other. It's almost stupid. It's retarded the way this is going down. We're basically funding both sides just through other shit. So anyway, I digress. This is just a frustration point for me. I'm sure many of you feel the same way. Middle East, North Africa, Iran executes 3 men over violence in last year's anti-government protests. So all those people who are like, America sucks, America's the devil, at least you can protest and not get your head lopped off by a dude with a big sword. Because in Iran, their asses got executed, and the typical execution in that country is they march you out in front of your family, put you over a wooden thing, and this dude with a scimitar about 4 feet long goes chomp, and you don't even get to go to the other side with your head attached to you. So that's what you get over there. So for those bleeding heart dumbasses, you know, they should. And by the way, most of the people who complain about America would be thrown in jail or executed in a place like Iran. So they need to remember that. But that's just me speaking out loud. Israel. Jewish-Palestinian worshippers clash again. Israel has been in an absolute shit show lately with the Palestinians, with the Gaza Strip. And this is from the Times of Israel. Rioters threw stones, injuring 2 20-year-olds, and a policeman as law enforcement dispersed the crowd. So they've been having ongoing issues. It's just frustrating. So Pakistan is right now investigating their former prime minister, but there's not a lot explaining what that is about. So, Western Hemisphere, and here we get to stuff that we can relate to. So Argentina's president and protesters slammed the International Money Fund debt austerity as their economy creaks. This is from Reuters. On the streets of Buenos Aires on Thursday, thousands of Argentines marched in protest against tough economic conditions and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, which many blame for austerity measures that sharpened and made worse, basically, Argentina's worst economic crisis in decades. This debt-based shit they're doing is just ruining economies. Argentina used to be one of the most robust economies in South America till they accepted socialism. And if you don't believe me, go watch my friend Canal Preppers Argentina, because he has all sorts of opinions on that. Ecuador court rejects lawmakers' challenge to the president's disbanding of the National Assembly. This is Associated Press. Ecuador's constitutional court voted unanimously Thursday to reject multiple challenges that sought to invalidate the president's decree dissolving his opposition-led National Assembly, I can't speak today, as it tried to oust him in an impeachment. Now, again, people like to bitch about America, but basically this president had a Congress of people voted by the people who tried to impeach him and take him out of office because apparently he did something they didn't like, and instead he dissolved the National Assembly and ran them off. So not something you can do here. You can't just run off Congress. The way we're structured, you cannot disband the Congress for no reason. So it's just interesting what's going on. The Gulf of Mexico, this is Insight Crime. This is a crime news. Gulf cartel still public enemy #1 on U.S.-Mexico border, according to Homeland Security. The Gulf cartel has maintained a presence along the U.S.-Mexico border from South Texas for nearly a century. But recent events suggest the criminal dynamics may be changing in this strategic corridor. On top of that, Mexican violence near capitals spews more ash, forcing school closure. Mexican volcano near capital spews ash, forcing school closures. So Mexico's getting double whammy. They have natural disasters occurring, and they're battling this cartel that is probably using the guns from our government that in our failed Fast and Furious move, or deliberate, who the hell knows. But we basically fed them a shit ton of weapons, just like we did the Taliban. So we have M4s and 249s and saws and shit all over the place. But anyway, I digress. 240 Bravos, I'm sure. Mexico is also getting all these illegal immigrants who are coming through to the U.S. or going through Mexico. So Mexico's getting triple whammied, really. It's getting the cartels issues, it has natural issues, and then it has this immigration issue of all the people trying to get to the U.S. and Canada. So, yeah, they're having a hard time. I don't think they have the infrastructure or the budget to really manage this the right way. Folks, a lot of instability. Now, what are your takeaways from this? Because you know my style. I like to give you some takeaways. First and foremost, there's nothing we can do about the international scene, but understanding how these disasters, wars, financial issues will affect things like immigration pattern. If you invest or if you get products from Mexico, Argentina, etc., Nigeria, whatever the hell you get, and you understand that economy is struggling or they're having a major problem like Sri Lanka did, it's a good way to help you make a better decision, right? If I know I have a product coming from Argentina, whatever it is, a medicine, product that I sell in my personal business, whatever the case is, and I know Argentina is struggling with a major issue of inflation. They were at 115% inflation from this year to last year, year on year, as of last month. That's huge. They're having problems, and we should be able to look at that and go, wow, I get whatever coffee or whatever product from Argentina. I need to adjust what I'm doing to account for what's happening to them. And these are the kind of things we need to pay attention to, not to panic, not to freak out, but to understand how these things work and how that ultimately affects our supply chain. So folks, that's your wrap up for Saturday Sitrep. I hope you guys enjoyed that. You guys be safe out there. I'm going to try and enjoy this weekend. I got a few odds and ends to do. Hopefully I'll be able to throw up a few quick live streams during the weekend. But if not, you guys take care, be safe, God bless, Godspeed, and I will see you all on my next video. You guys take care of yourselves and play nice with the other children. Unless they're stupid, then kick them off the slide, right? Be good. I'll see you later.